On a regular school day, the MC, Ushidomi, congratulates Shirakawa for placing in the top 20 of the rankings. She quickly returns the compliment, pointing out that he ranked first in both Japanese and English. Their exchange leaves both of them blushing, and before long their classmates begin noticing the awkwardly sweet atmosphere between them. Since the two spend so much time together, some classmates start wondering if their relationship is more than friendship. One girl points out that they often stay in the classroom after school and suggests that something might be going on between them. A boy quickly steps in, saying that relationships are personal matters and shouldn't be discussed so openly. In his view, such topics should be left to the people involved. After hearing the discussion, Ushidomi laughs lightly and brings it up to Shirakawa. She smiles and finds it amusing that their classmates have come to that conclusion. Ushidomi explains that there is a simple reason they stay after school. As class representatives, they are responsible for making sure the classroom is properly secured before leaving. Shirakawa adds that while they wait for everyone else to go home, they simply use the extra time to study together. To her, it is the most practical use of their free time. Their explanation surprises Chaosiyama, who had imagined a completely different situation. When she directly asks whether they are dating, Shirakawa firmly denies it. She says that students should focus on their studies and responsibilities, and that romance is not something she can prioritize right now. Ushidomi agrees. He says that the two of them think alike and that he is currently focused on academic goals as well. In his opinion, this stage of life should be devoted to studying rather than romance. Chaosiyama looks disappointed by their answer because she had imagined seeing them together as a couple someday. Both Ushidomi and Shirakawa awkwardly reply that such a thing is unlikely to happen. At that point, the boy who spoke earlier shares his thoughts. He says that feelings do not always follow logic. People often come up with reasons afterward, while their hearts have already made the decision long before they realize it. His words immediately impress his girlfriend, who excitedly praises him and calls him Makun. Embarrassed by the attention, Makun quickly tries to brush off his own comment. Eventually, the conversation ends and everyone returns to their usual activities. Later that day, after the other students leave, Ushidomi and Shirakawa remain in the classroom and continue studying together. While reviewing a passage, he notices that one sentence is particularly difficult to understand. Shirakawa checks a reference book and suggests that the answer is probably there. She points out that the passage contains many unfamiliar terms and complicated grammar patterns, so they need to examine it carefully to avoid misunderstanding it. Ushidomi agrees, noting that even a small mistake could lead to the wrong answer. As he studies, his thoughts begin to wander. Since childhood, Ushidomi has always enjoyed academics. The certainty of correct answers and the orderliness of logical thinking have always reassured him. That same mindset is what led him to volunteer as class representative at the beginning of the school year. The position needed to be filled, and he simply thought it was the most reasonable thing to do. His thoughts drift back to the day when the teacher asked for another volunteer to serve alongside him. While the classroom remained silent, Shirakawa calmly volunteered herself. Although he agreed with everything Shirakawa said earlier, ever since that day he has been unable to approach one particular issue with the same logic he applies to everything else. No matter how much he thinks about it, he cannot find a satisfying answer. Again and again, he finds himself wondering what Shirakawa truly thinks of him. Lost in thought, he barely notices Shirakawa calling his name. When he finally looks up, she hesitantly reaches toward him and asks whether he knows about oxytocin. Ushidomi immediately recognizes the term and explains that oxytocin is often connected to feelings of relaxation and stress relief. While gently holding his arm, Shirakawa adds that it is a chemical produced by the brain and is commonly associated with closeness between people who have a strong emotional connection. As she continues talking, Shirakawa suddenly apologizes for something she said earlier and asks him to forget about it. Once she finishes, she starts to move away from him. Before she can leave, however, Ushidomi reaches out and lightly catches hold of her sleeve. Shirakawa insists that the situation has been misunderstood, but Ushidomi disagrees. He remarks that he is already familiar with the concepts she mentioned and believes there is nothing confusing about it. From his perspective, taking moments to relax in that manner can improve concentration and make studying more productive, making it a perfectly reasonable approach. The two of them then settle down facing one another. He takes Shirakawa's hand, and she asks him what he thinks about it. After considering it, he admits that being close to her in that way feels pleasant. He adds that the effect she described seems to be working quite well and expresses his appreciation before asking how she feels about it herself. After a brief pause, she quietly admits that she feels the same way. During lunch, Makun notices Ushidomi's curry bento and asks if that's what he's having that day. Ushidomi explains that it's simply leftover curry from the previous night's dinner. Chaosiyama comments that it looks delicious, while Shirakawa notes that curry often reflects a family's taste since every household prepares it differently. As the conversation continues, Ushidomi mentions that he personally prefers mild curry. Although the curry at home is usually quite spicy, He says he never complains when someone has gone through the effort of cooking for him. Hearing this, Shirakaba is surprised to learn that he likes mild curry and briefly considers remembering the detail before wondering why it matters to her at all. Meanwhile, Ushidome finds himself curious about Shirakaba's preferences and begins wondering what kind of curry she likes. Shirakaba sits on the train with a dictionary in hand on her way to school, reviewing new vocabulary. As the train moves along with its steady rhythm, she studies words such along with their Japanese equivalents. While studying, her thoughts drift back to the previous day. She calmly analyzes what happened and tries to explain her reaction logically. She convinces herself that what she experienced was simply a physiological response related to stress and concentration, not an emotional one. Even so, a small doubt lingers in her mind. She briefly wonders whether Ushidome may have misunderstood her actions. The passengers around her notice how focused she is. Some quietly admire her, seeing her as a diligent student who spends her commute studying. After arriving at school, Shirakaba is greeted by Chaozuya Akiyama. She politely returns their greetings. Chaozuya excitedly shows her a new item she bought from a convenience store. After taking a brief look, Shirakaba continues on her way. Chaozuya and Akiyama then discuss the item together, mentioning that it is a newly released soda flavor with a unique taste. Akiyama takes a photo, thinking it might disappear from stores quickly. A little later, Shirakaba notices that Ushidome has not arrived yet. Since he is usually punctual, she finds his absence unusual. At that moment, Akiyama tells her that he was talking with Tan Aks Sensei in the hallway. Shirakaba nods in understanding. However, she then questions why he assumed she was looking for him. Realizing her mistake, he awkwardly apologizes for misunderstanding the situation. Soon afterward, Ushidome enters the classroom and greets everyone. Chaozuya immediately asks why Tan Aks Sensei called him out. Ushidome replies that he was not being scolded. Instead, he was asked to collect the class notebooks and deliver them to the social studies preparation room before the end of the day. To make the task easier, he decides to collect the boys' notebooks himself while asking Shirakaba to handle the girls' side. This way they can finish before lunch. She agrees without hesitation. As the conversation ends, Shirakaba quietly looks at her hands and reflects on the situation. She feels relieved that Ushidome is acting normally. There does not seem to be any misunderstanding between them, and everything feels the same as before. After class, the two collect the notebooks and carry them to the social studies preparation room. When they arrive, however, they discover that nobody is there. Ushidome frowns and wonders whether Tan Aks Sensei is still on lunch break. Shirakaba places the notebooks on a desk and suggests leaving them there before returning to class. Ushidome sets his notebooks down as well but disagrees. He explains that the notebooks contain personal and academic information, so they should be handled responsibly. Since grades are involved and no one else is present, he believes someone should stay until the teacher arrives. Shirakaba questions whether both of them need to remain there. In her view, staying would only waste their lunch break. Ushidome responds that they were both entrusted with the notebooks as class representatives, making them equally responsible. Shirakaba says she understands the importance of responsibility but argues that efficiency matters too. She suggests staying behind herself while Ushidome returns to class. He immediately rejects the idea. He says he does not want to leave her alone in case something unexpected happens. He insists that they should both stay together until Tan Aks Sensei returns. His response confuses Shirakaba. To her, he is being unusually strict, and his behavior feels different from normal. A brief silence follows. Ushidome says nothing more, and eventually Shirakaba decides to look for Tan Aks Sensei herself. She leaves for the staff room despite Ushidome's attempt to stop her. After she leaves, Ushidome remains alone in the preparation room. He begins questioning his own actions and wonders why he cannot simply wait calmly until after school. Meanwhile, Shirakaba walks through the school by herself. As she thinks about what happened, she grows increasingly uneasy. She starts questioning Ushidome's intentions and worries that his actions may not have been as innocent as they first appeared. After school, rain begins to fall as Shirakaba walks home with her umbrella. As she makes her way through the rain, she can't stop thinking about Ushidome's recent behavior. She keeps recalling how he held her hand after school and wonders whether it might happen again today. The uncertainty makes her nervous, and she doesn't know how she should react if it does. At first, holding hands seemed harmless enough, but lately the amount of time they spend like that has gradually increased. Realizing this, she feels that their relationship is slowly changing in a way she hadn't expected. The thought makes her even more uneasy, and she starts wondering if something more might happen soon. Perhaps even today. Lost in thought, she unconsciously begins walking faster through the rain. Suddenly, Ushidome appears and grabs her hand, stopping her in her tracks. In a serious tone, he warns her that she's in danger and points out that the traffic signal is still red. However, Shirakaba is too distracted to fully process what he's saying. Flustered and caught off guard, she quickly hurries away from the scene. Later during class, the teacher asks a question and calls on Shirakaba to answer. She hesitates, stands up, and apologizes, admitting that she wasn't paying attention and hadn't been listening to the lesson properly. Her mind remains elsewhere, and she is unable to focus on what is being taught. After class ends and most of the students leave, only she and Ushidome remain in the classroom. He sits near her and explains that the equation discussed during the lesson is an important concept and that she should make sure to understand it carefully. While he speaks, she remains distant, still lost in her thoughts, and does not fully respond to what he is saying. Noticing her lack of focus, he observes her behavior more closely and eventually asks if something is bothering her. He tells her that she has not been acting like herself for the past few days and even now seems distracted, barely engaging with her studies. He adds that if something is wrong, he is willing to help and encourages her to talk about it. Hearing this, she internally reacts with frustration, blaming him in her thoughts for the way she has been feeling recently. However, when she speaks, she denies having any worries and insists that nothing is wrong. She further tells him that he is misunderstanding the situation and suggests that he is the one acting strangely instead, claiming that if anyone has been behaving differently lately, it is him. After hearing her response, he tells her to stop making strange accusations, saying that the situation is becoming uncomfortable for him. He then decides to leave the classroom, ending the conversation. As he begins to leave, she suddenly reaches out and grabs his hand, stopping him. She confronts him directly, insisting that he is trying to avoid responsibility and questioning why he had spoken as if she were the one at fault. He tells her to lower her voice, warning that someone might overhear them. Looking increasingly uncomfortable, he asks her to let go of him and repeats that this is not about who is right or wrong. He insists she should release him and stop. After a brief struggle, she finally lets go. He stumbles slightly as the tension between them continues to rise. He then steps forward again, closing the distance. Without leaving the classroom, he guides her backward until her back is near the wall, standing directly in front of her. She responds by blaming him again, saying his actions caused the situation and that he is responsible for how things have developed. At this point, he admits that he can also lose his temper and warns her that she is crossing a line. He firmly tells her to end the argument and go home without causing more trouble, adding that if she continues, he may not be able to control himself. He immediately realizes his wording was too harsh and pauses before quickly apologizing for how it came out. She then challenges him, asking what he will do if she refuses to stay silent and continues behaving the same way. In response, he steps even closer, takes her glasses off, and tells her he will not allow her to simply walk away from the situation. He asks if she understands, maintaining a firm stance. She replies that she understands, still refusing to back down. The tension between them remains unbroken. Then, in a sudden shift, she removes her own glasses as well. The distance between them disappears completely. In the silence, neither of them steps back. And finally, they close the remaining space and share a kiss. After school, Ushidome returns home and sits in the bathtub, lost in deep thought. The events that took place only a few hours earlier feel unreal to him, yet he is certain that they actually happened. He recalls the kiss with Shirakawa, even though they are only class representatives. This thought confuses him, and he begins questioning whether such an action can be considered acceptable or whether it has changed the nature of their relationship in any way. Ushidome starts wondering if taking responsibility means they should start dating. After all, what happened felt like something a couple would do. The thought leaves him confused as he tries to figure out what their relationship has become. Since he usually solves problems through logic, he decides to analyze the situation step by step. In his imagination, Shirakawa appears as a strict teacher questioning him about the meaning of the kiss. Feeling like a student being tested, he desperately comes up with an explanation. He argues that the kiss wasn't romantic at all. It was only meant to stop her from talking in that moment. He convinces himself that both of them understood it that way, treating it more like a practical action than an expression of affection. In this imaginary scenario, Shirakawa accepts his answer, making him feel as though he passed an important exam. But even that doesn't fully calm him down. Back in reality, he realizes how shaken he still is. He thinks about how badly things could have gone if someone had seen them. They could have been misunderstood or gotten into serious trouble. No matter how much he tries to explain it away, he can't deny that the experience affected him deeply. Then another worrying thought appears. What if something similar happens again? The idea only makes him more anxious. His imagination starts running wild about what might happen if they find themselves in a similar situation again, leaving him completely unsure of how he would react. Realizing he's overthinking, he forces himself to stop. He decides to focus on studying again, hoping that returning to his workbook will help him regain control of his thoughts. Later that evening, after taking a bath, Ushidome sits at his desk but still can't settle down. He tells himself that the unusual warmth he's feeling is simply because of the hot bath and nothing else. Any other explanation, he insists, is just his imagination running wild. As he thinks about Shirakawa, he reminds himself that she's serious, reliable, and intelligent. Yet despite knowing her so well, his thoughts keep returning to what happened between them. The more he thinks about it, the more confused he becomes. He realizes that he has very little experience with relationships or physical closeness, making it difficult for him to understand his own feelings. He admits that he had no real idea what he was doing and had only relied on vague scenes he'd seen in romantic dramas. Looking back, he feels his actions were probably awkward and clumsy. The memory of being so close to her, the warmth, the closeness, and the intensity of the moment, only makes it harder for him to think clearly. As his thoughts continue to spiral, he wonders what Shirakawa is doing right now and whether she's thinking about the same event. Not knowing the answer makes him even more restless. Finally, unable to take it anymore, he lies down and tries to clear his head. He insists that he's only taking a short break before returning to his studies. Repeating that promise to himself, he does his best to stop thinking about the kiss, at least for the moment. After returning home from school, Shirakawa spends time alone in the bath. As she sits quietly in the warm water, her mind repeatedly drifts back to what happened earlier that day. She cannot stop recalling Ushidome's expression and finds herself uncertain about how she should face him afterward. The experience feels unreal to her, yet she knows it truly happened. The realization that she shared such an intimate moment with him leaves her restless and unable to settle her mind. While considering everything that occurred, she attempts to shift the responsibility away from herself. From Shirakawa's point of view, she had only questioned Ushidome while he was the one who took things further. She convinces herself that she was simply carried along by the situation and wasn't the one controlling what happened. Even so, the incident keeps replaying in her mind, and the more she thinks about it, the more embarrassed she becomes. Trying to calm herself down, she looks at the small duck-shaped toy floating in the bath and starts sorting through her thoughts. She decides that there should be clear boundaries between them and that nothing beyond what already happened should be allowed. Determined not to get swept up in the moment again, she resolves to be firmer when she sees Ushidome at school tomorrow. However, the longer she stays in the bath, the more her imagination starts running wild. Before long, she creates an exaggerated scenario in her head. In it, Ushidome appears and approaches her as if he's trying to help. Instead of trusting him, she immediately becomes suspicious and convinces herself that his calm attitude is only meant to lower her guard. The imaginary Ushidome looks confused by her accusations and doesn't understand what she's talking about. She then brings up the incident that has been bothering her all evening and argues that it never should have happened. She insists that their relationship has never been anything more than friendship. The imaginary Ushidome calmly points out that they both understood the circumstances that led to it. This only makes her more flustered. She argues that there were many other ways the situation could have been handled. Rather than agreeing with her, he asks if she's making the issue bigger than it really is, and suggests that she may be overthinking everything. The argument in her imagination continues to grow more dramatic. When he points out that they often spend time together after school and have become comfortable around each other, Shirakawa struggles to respond. He questions whether the explanations she gave herself were truly honest or simply convenient excuses. As the fantasy continues, the imaginary Ushidome keeps challenging her reasoning. He accuses her of hiding her true thoughts and avoiding questions she doesn't want to answer. According to the version in her head, he insists that she isn't being completely honest with herself. Within this imagined situation, Shirakawa feels overwhelmed with embarrassment. She wants the conversation to end and wishes she could hide from the uncomfortable thoughts it keeps bringing up. Yet the imaginary Ushidome continues questioning her, making it harder for her to avoid the issue. Even in her imagination, Shirakawa strongly rejects his claims. She insists that he's completely wrong and refuses to accept any of his conclusions. In the end, she realizes that the entire scenario exists only in her head, created by her own confusion, embarrassment, and anxiety while sitting alone in the bath. Later that evening, she leaves the bathroom and returns to her room. She lies down on her bed, hoping that some quiet time will help calm her thoughts. However, even after resting for a while, she feels no better. Eventually, she sits up and drinks some water, but it does little to ease her mind. As she sits quietly, she realizes that spending time in the bath accomplished nothing. All of the worries she had beforehand are still there. Normally, she would be studying at this hour and preparing for future lessons. Instead, she finds herself unable to focus on anything productive. The situation frustrates her because she can no longer think as clearly as before. Until yesterday, she had never paid much attention to these kinds of feelings or experiences. They simply weren't things she thought about. Now, however, they keep resurfacing no matter how hard she tries to ignore them. Before long, her thoughts return to Ushidome once again. She realizes that he is the reason she now understands feelings and sensations that were once unfamiliar to her. The events of the previous day gave her an experience she had never gone through before. The memory remains vivid, and the more she thinks about it, the harder it becomes to push aside. Because of that, she ends up blaming him. In her eyes, everything changed after that moment, and she feels that he is responsible for the confusion she is dealing with now. No matter how hard she tries to focus on something else, her thoughts always circle back to the same memory. As evening turns into night, another concern begins to bother her. She realizes that she will have to see Ushidome again at school tomorrow. The thought immediately makes her nervous. She has no idea how she should act around him or what kind of expression she should have when they meet. Lying on her bed, she continues thinking about how much things have changed. The memory of their closeness remains firmly stuck in her mind, and she feels certain that the experience has left a lasting impression on her. Unable to find any answers, she stares ahead and wonders how she is supposed to face Ushidome when tomorrow finally arrives. The following morning, he heads to school while struggling with extreme fatigue. He has received very little sleep during the night. By the time he realized how much time has passed, dawn has already arrived. Throughout his journey, he worries that his lack of rest might somehow be noticeable to Shirakawa. The thought repeatedly crosses his mind, gradually making him more uneasy. However, he quickly dismisses it and convinces himself that there is no real reason for concern. He decides that the best approach is to behave exactly as he normally would and not let anything unusual show in his actions. When he arrives at school, he immediately notices that Shirakawa appears just as exhausted as he is. Both of them look noticeably tired as they exchange a morning greeting. After that, they move toward their shoe lockers and begin changing their footwear. Around them, other students are already engaged in lively conversations, discussing ordinary school matters and chatting casually with one another. As they stand near the lockers, he observes her more closely and notices the signs of exhaustion on her face. Curious, he asks her about it. She briefly looks in his direction before saying that she had simply stayed awake late because of her studies. Hearing this, he realizes that they are in the same situation. He admits that he also remained awake far later than usual the previous night. Just as the conversation continues, he notices something unexpected. She suddenly loses her grip on her shoes, causing them to fall. She immediately explains that it happened because her hand slipped and quickly bends down, intending to pick them up before anyone pays further attention. While standing there, he becomes lost in thought. He cannot understand why interacting with her suddenly feels so different from before. The natural rhythm that once existed between them seems difficult to find, and he struggles to recall how they normally behaved around each other. This uncertainty leaves him confused, and he begins to wonder what kind of attitude he should maintain whenever he is with her now. Without saying much, he steps forward and picks up the shoes, handing them back to her. She politely expresses her gratitude, and the brief exchange comes to an end as the two of them continue preparing for the start of the school day. Throughout the school day, he finds it difficult to focus completely on his usual routine. As the hours pass, he becomes increasingly aware of time, and the wait until the end of classes feels far longer than normal. The thought of meeting her after school remains at the back of his mind, making the day feel unusually drawn out. Once the final lesson ends, the students gradually leave the classroom and head home. After school, she goes to the restroom to freshen up before returning to the classroom. When she arrives, she finds that he is already there. He has already begun studying on his own, and he has also checked the classroom windows to ensure everything is properly secured before their study session begins. Rather than immediately taking her usual place, she remains standing near the entrance of the classroom. He notices that she has not moved toward her seat and looks in her direction. Seeing her still standing there, he calls out to her, wondering why she has not joined him yet. After a brief pause, she apologizes to him. She then explains that there is something she wishes to discuss with him before they continue with their studies. Remaining where she is, she prepares to bring up the matter that has been on her mind while he listens attentively. Shirakawa enters the classroom carrying a growing sense of frustration that has been building inside her for days. Despite repeatedly telling herself that she will regain control of her thoughts and return to normal, she finds herself unable to do so. As she approaches Ushidome, a troubling question weighs heavily on her mind: whether she has become the reason he can no longer devote himself fully to studying. Unable to hold the thought back any longer, she voices her concern. Ushidome immediately rejects the idea. He reminds her of their conversation from the previous night, pointing out that both of them had stayed awake for a long time while studying. Seeing the distress on her face, he tells her to calm down and take her seat. Even so, Shirakawa cannot accept his explanation so easily. She keeps searching for reassurance and asks if he is truly unaffected by everything that has been happening between them. Her emotions begin to spill over as she finally admits what she has been holding back. She is not fine. She becomes aware of changes in herself that she can no longer ignore. No matter how strongly she tries to push certain thoughts away, they keep returning. What started as a simple arrangement meant to help them study has slowly turned into something that constantly occupies her mind. The fear that she might eventually become a burden instead of someone helpful grows stronger with each passing moment. That realization leaves her deeply uneasy. For a while now she has been afraid that things might eventually reach this point. She never wanted to tell Ushidome about these worries, but she can no longer keep them inside. After carefully thinking it through, she arrives at what feels like the only reasonable conclusion. Ending their study sessions might be the best option. She remains standing near the classroom door, waiting for his response. Ushidome acknowledges that her concerns are understandable. He also admits that he should have been more honest from the beginning. Recently, he confesses, even he has found it difficult to fully concentrate on his studies. Continuing in the same way, he says, may eventually make their study sessions lose effectiveness. Shirakawa turns her face away as she listens. For a brief moment, silence fills the space between them. Then Ushidome rises from his seat and walks over to her. Before she can react, he gently wraps his arms around her from behind. The sudden gesture surprises her, leaving her frozen for an instant. While holding her, he begins to explain a scientific principle about opposing forces. He describes how a helicopter remains suspended in the air because the downward force creates an equal force in the opposite direction. Drawing a parallel to their situation, he suggests that a similar kind of balance might exist between them. Shirakawa listens quietly as he continues speaking. He explains that separating now could easily create even greater difficulties than the ones they are already facing. Instead of solving anything, it might leave them unable to interact comfortably, as too many things would remain unresolved between them. Such an outcome, he believes, could later become a source of regret. He adds that they might end up spending a long time wondering how things could have turned out if even small circumstances had been different. Although the future is uncertain, he still wants to continue spending this time with her rather than bringing it to an end now. Shirakawa stays silent for a moment as she processes his words. Then, gently, she frees herself from his embrace and moves further into the classroom. After stopping, she removes her glasses and finally admits that she feels the same way. She also wants them to continue spending time together. She explains that what she truly hopes for is that they will regain their determination and return to their efforts the next day. Eventually, she wants both of them to shift their focus back to studying and work hard again as they originally intended. After hearing her response, Ushidome also removes his glasses. As they face each other, the distance between them seems to disappear once more. Without saying anything further, they share another kiss. In that moment, both of them decide to temporarily set aside their academic worries and focus on something else for a short while. Later, when it is finally time to leave school, Ushidome asks if he should accompany Shirakawa to the station. However, she refuses the offer. She points out that his home is in a completely different direction and that walking her there would only delay his own journey back. Ushidome understands her reasoning and does not insist further. Before leaving, Shirakawa mentions that she needs to catch her train and cannot afford to be late. After saying goodbye for the day, she leaves the school grounds alone. Once she is gone, Ushidome remains behind, left alone with his thoughts. Although he is usually confident when it comes to exams and academic challenges, he realizes that things become far more complicated whenever Shirakawa is involved. Looking back on everything that happened, especially the events of that day, he cannot decide whether he handled things correctly. Even after thinking it through carefully, uncertainty remains about whether his choices were truly right. Still, one memory stays with him. As Shirakawa left, she had clearly said that they would meet again the next day. That simple promise brings him a sense of satisfaction greater than anything he could gain from perfect exam results. The knowledge that he will see her again soon feels more meaningful to him than any academic achievement. The story goes back to the past. It is spring, and cherry blossoms are falling as the school entrance ceremony begins. All new students are being guided to the gym. Ushidome enters high school, thinking that it will not feel very different from middle school. As he walks through the school for the first time, he looks around to find his way. He is trying to locate the gym while observing everything around him. The school feels bigger and more organized than his previous one. There are more students, and the school offers more subjects and activities. While walking, he wonders if high school is really only different in surface details like this. Around him, other students are talking and laughing, filled with excitement on the first day. He continues walking and notices small interactions between students. He becomes slightly lost in thought while observing the busy environment. Suddenly, he accidentally bumps into another student. Both of them stop right away and apologize. Ushidome says he was not paying full attention while walking, and the other student also admits she was not watching where she was going. As the situation settles, both of them glance toward the outside of the building, where cherry blossoms can be seen falling beyond the windows. The view captures their attention for a brief moment, shifting focus away from the earlier misunderstanding. The sight of the blossoms lingers as they remain near each other in that shared pause. After the exchange, the other student clarifies that responsibility should not rest on Ushidome alone, while he continues to consider the circumstances and the timing of the incident, acknowledging that both movement and attention played a role. The brief interaction comes to an end, and the student leaves, allowing Ushidome to continue on his way. With that moment concluded, he proceeds forward into the rest of his first day, and his high school life officially begins. As class representatives, Shirakawa and Ushidome remain in the classroom after school. They spend that time studying together, believing that learning side by side is more productive than working alone. By helping each other understand difficult topics, they are able to improve their efficiency. At the same time, they recognize that periods of rest are necessary during long study sessions. After school, the two of them sit together in the classroom as usual. Following their brief moment together, Shirakaba looks toward Ushidome and quietly considers the situation. Her practice exam results have been steadily improving, and she sees no issue with continuing what they have been doing. Even so, as time passes, a growing curiosity lingers at the back of her mind, gradually becoming stronger and making her want to test the boundaries of their unusual break routine. Acting on that impulse, she reaches out toward him in an impulsive gesture, but hesitates midway and stops herself, quickly realizing she has crossed a line. She pulls back and returns to her seat, insisting that they focus on their studies without delay. Once they settle down again, Ushidome points out that they would not normally stop so abruptly. Shirakaba immediately dismisses the idea of continuing any further. In her view, their breaks have recently been taking up more time than they should, and she believes they need to be more careful. Since studying remains their priority, she feels this is a suitable moment to correct that habit and restore a better balance between work and rest. He agrees with her reasoning. Acknowledging that their academic responsibilities should come first, he admits that they have allowed their breaks to become longer than necessary. After giving the matter some thought, he proposes a different approach. Rather than increasing the amount of time they spend away from studying, he suggests making better use of a shorter period instead, focusing more on efficiency and structure. Shirakaba adjusts her glasses and tries to maintain a composed expression, though she does not fully understand what Ushidome is suggesting. Because the idea is unfamiliar to her, she leaves the explanation to him and follows his lead. Soon, the two of them are sitting face to face once again. Ushidome carefully guides the study session with more seriousness than before. He encourages her to remain calm and not dwell too much on distractions. Despite his efforts, Shirakaba gradually becomes more self-conscious. The closer the focus of their interaction becomes, the harder it is for her to keep her thoughts fully organized, and she struggles to determine how she should respond. As the moment continues, she comes to understand that Ushidome is treating the matter with complete sincerity. Rather than acting impulsively, he remains focused on handling everything carefully and responsibly. This only makes her emotions more complicated, leaving her uncertain about what she should do next. Eventually, she calls out to him, prompting Ushidome to stop and check on her. Concerned that he may have made her uncomfortable, he immediately apologizes. He explains that he had tried to prepare himself beforehand, but he still lacks experience and remains unsure whether he handled things correctly. Listening to him, Shirakaba finds it difficult to separate her own feelings from the emotions they share in these moments. The sense of closeness between them feels stronger than before, and she begins to realize that she wants to continue building meaningful experiences together with Ushidome, moving forward side by side. The following day, Ushidome remains in his room, sitting quietly while his thoughts stay fixed on what happened the previous day. He keeps replaying the moment in his mind, especially the way the interaction felt more complicated than anything they had shared before. The memory of that moment lingers strongly, and he cannot easily push it away. He finds himself returning again and again to how different it felt compared to their earlier experiences, as if something in their usual interaction had subtly changed. That difference continues to trouble him, and he wonders whether the moment felt more difficult to process than either of them expected or whether it became more complicated than intended. He tries to understand it, but the thought leaves him uneasy as he attempts to make sense of both his own reactions and hers. His attention gradually shifts toward his own behavior during that moment. He starts doubting the way he acted, remembering how he tried to appear composed and handle the situation properly. At the time, he attempted to guide the situation while maintaining a steady attitude, but now he feels that he may have been pretending more than he realized. In his memory, the way he spoke and acted begins to feel slightly exaggerated, and he worries that it may have come across as unnatural or forced. As he continues reflecting, the uncertainty within him does not settle. He questions whether he handled everything too strongly or whether his actions may have made things more complicated for her. The possibility that she might not have felt fully comfortable begins to trouble him more the longer he thinks about it. This concern deepens as he wonders if anything he did led to a misunderstanding between them or left the situation feeling different for her as well. Even as he prepares for school and goes through his usual routine, his thoughts remain unsettled. His actions continue on autopilot, yet his mind keeps circling back to the same moment, trying to interpret what her reactions might have meant. He considers that he may have completely misread the situation or that he may have unintentionally influenced the moment in a way he never intended. Despite his efforts to push these thoughts aside, the uncertainty stays with him as he eventually heads out, still unable to reach any clear conclusion. As Ushidome arrives at school, Shirakaba approaches him and greets him in a calm manner. She notices his reaction as he looks at her and briefly comments on the change in her appearance due to the summer uniform. The timing of the uniform change makes her feel slightly out of place, as she is aware that most students have not yet adjusted to wearing it. She explains that she feels somewhat noticeable and a little uncomfortable because of the situation. There is a quiet awkwardness in her tone, as she assumes she may have made a mistake by wearing the lighter uniform too early in the transition period. Her concern remains subtle but clear, and she becomes more conscious of how different she looks compared to others around her. Ushidome responds in a steady and composed manner. He reassures her that she has not made any mistake and that she does not look out of place. His words are not casual reassurance but a sincere observation. He also adds that the summer uniform suits her well, offering his honest impression without hesitation. Shirakawa listens to his response and accepts it with a small sense of relief. She acknowledges his opinion without pressing the concern further, though a slight uncertainty still lingers. Her expression softens as she processes his words and gradually lets go of her worry. Around them, the school environment remains noticeably unchanged, with other students still wearing their jackets and not yet fully adapting to the seasonal shift. Despite that, they feel unexpectedly warm, creating a subtle contrast between how things appear and how they actually feel. Summer has its own special smells, like the disinfectant from swimming pools, the warm, wet smell of roads after rain, and the fresh deodorants placed near store entrances that smell slightly sweet with hints of citrus and mint. All of these scents mix together in the air. In this atmosphere, she becomes sure that Ushidome has noticed that her scent feels a little different than usual. At the same time, she also feels that both of them are aware of the feeling of summer all around them. Since that point onward, they engage in frequent brief kissing on a daily basis, gradually becoming accustomed to it as the routine continues, and it starts to feel increasingly normal and emotionally significant for both of them. As time passes and the period just before the summer vacation arrives, the midterm results are announced. Their scores decline significantly, falling far below what they had expected. In the classroom, as the two class representatives, Shirakawa reacts with confusion and frustration, questioning the situation as their combined performance drops to a level neither of them has experienced before, far below the top ranks they were used to maintaining. Ushidome attempts to stay composed and suggests that if they determine the reason behind the decline and address it properly, they should be able to recover quickly. Shirakawa immediately places the responsibility on Ushidome. He responds that their interactions were intended only to make their breaks more efficient and reminds her that she also agreed to it. Shirakawa rejects this, denying full responsibility, but he insists that she was the one who would not let go of his arm during those moments. She denies the claim. He believes that if such things occurred, she may not have been fully aware at the time, adding that it is a problem. The argument continues as Shirakawa insists he is the problem, while also accusing him of using a gentle tone that affects her more than he admits. Ushidome counters by saying she was the one who first interlocked her fingers with his hand. Shirakawa responds that he had been looking at her with an unusually strong sense of longing. As the tension rises, their argument breaks down again, and they once more find themselves standing closer than intended before quickly realizing it and stepping back. Afterward, Ushidome reflects internally that beginning the next day he should return to normal behavior and focus properly on studying again. However, he also realizes that the upcoming summer vacation will last about a month, during which they will not be able to see each other. Ushidome sits at his study table and tries to focus on his books. He struggles to concentrate, and his mind keeps drifting away from studying. He feels unable to maintain focus for long. He decides to change his environment. He leaves for the public swimming pool, thinking that swimming might help him clear his head. He also hopes that moving his body will help him stop overthinking. On the way, and even after reaching the pool, he keeps thinking about Shirakawa, wondering what she is doing, whether she feels restless in the same way. He remembers his own stubborn behavior from before, and he starts worrying about their situation after the summer break. He even thinks she might not want to continue their study sessions anymore. At the pool, he tries to distract himself by swimming. He becomes aware of the sounds and activity around him, notices excitement near the water slide, and also observes the people nearby. Suddenly, he sees Shirakawa standing there with her friends, wearing a swimsuit. Both of them are shocked by the unexpected meeting. Shirakawa's friends react first, assuming that Ushidome was secretly called there. They complain that it is unfair if the plan was only for girls, and they also suggest that the rumors might have been true. Shirakawa quickly stops them, explaining that they are misunderstanding the situation. Ushidome and Shirakawa then sit on nearby chairs, and the atmosphere becomes awkward. Ushidome realizes how unexpected the coincidence is, and he also becomes aware of her appearance in the swimsuit, which leaves him unsure how to react. Shirakawa confirms that the meeting is just a coincidence. Ushidome thinks that he should apologize for what happened before, and he also considers the possibility of studying together again after summer vacation. Shirakawa then brings up his earlier confident attitude about improving their grades. She questions whether he should really be spending time relaxing and reminds him of his own statement about raising their scores easily. Ushidome replies that everything is going fine, adding that light exercise helps improve focus, and he also questions whether she should be worrying about herself instead. He then realizes that his tone sounds too confrontational and understands that he should not act this way. He notices that she came there to have fun with her friends. Shirakawa explains that her friends invited her and says there is nothing wrong with enjoying herself, adding that she is still studying properly. Yushidome suggests that she should return to her friends instead of staying to talk with him. Shirakawa agrees and prepares to leave. Before leaving completely, she mentions a quiet study space at the city library, describing it as a place known for concentration, with air conditioning, heating, and wide desks, and noting that it is usually not crowded. She thinks about studying there, considers the idea for a moment, and then decides on a time to try it, planning to go on Saturday at 1 p.m.